Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. Let's crack on with today's first story. Much love, guys. Now, over on the Mark Narrations subreddit, we had a suggestion from General Programmer who told us there was an update to an HOA story. I was like, oh hell yeah, we're going to be reading that. The story is from the Just No HOA subreddit from Spurred One Last Time that says, my vindictive ex-wife illegally signed application to local HOA in my name. I'll start this off by saying my ex is vindictive as hell. We've been fully divorced since about right before the pandemic started. We sold the house we shared and I didn't have to pay her alimony because she cheated and we're in an at-fault state. It was messy since D-Day. All of the stereotypes. First the sobbing, and then the trickle truth saying I love you, it was just one time, okay, it was 2 years, then gaslighting followed by, I'm going to take you for everything. Before packing her shit and walking out. I feel like I never really knew the woman my ex was in all the time we were together. We were married 5 years and together for 7, and in 2 of those 5 married years, she had affairs with 3 other men. The final one being a foreign businessman of some sort from what I could find out. Yes, I got tested for STDs and was thankfully negative. Yes, she got pregnant by the final affair partner. And no, I didn't sign the birth certificate because I found out about all the affairs before the baby was born, thanks to a call from the first affair partner. My ex tried to go full scorched earth on me, but since we live in and we're married in an at-fault state, she lost. We didn't pay equally into our house and the equity was divided 70-30. So I got a pretty good cash payout when I sold our marital home to put as a down payment on a different house closer to my job. It's a bit of a downgrade, but suits a single guy in his 30s like me just fine. My ex did show up to my house once, but I refused to let her in. She bitched at me that I'd financially ruined her in the divorce. I said that if she was fully willing to do that to me first, and the bitch had the audacity to say it should have been my life fucked over and not hers. I laughed so hard and said it was karma. She yelled that she'd sue me for what was rightfully hers. I said if she was gonna sue me, then to go ahead and sue me. It'd end up the same way in court because she has nothing but a false sob story. She was the cheater, not me. I'm no angel, but I didn't do anything to her, and she was the one who ruined our marriage. She then said that she'd tell everyone she could that I abused her. I said I'd sue her for defamation if she did. I was recording our interaction and had those words saved to my phone. She went wide-eyed and her jaw dropped. The look people are calling the surprised Pikachu face. Then I asked why she was there, if not to just try and make trouble, because she had a new man in her life that knocked her up. She just huffed at me and said he isn't around much, and she's stuck in a tiny apartment living off his child support till he comes back. It was immature of me, I know, but I did the bit of playing the world's smallest violin. She yelled at me to go fuck myself, and I yelled back that I'd sooner do that than her any time. She raged at me and then got into her car to leave. Haven't seen her since. There is an HOA in my neighborhood, but I was not legally obligated to join it because the last owner of my house was not a member. I made sure of that through a real estate lawyer as well. The HOA had no grounds to force me to join and were not happy about it. The HOA president would show up with forms every week the first month demanding I sign them. Then she threatened to take me to court, which I had a cease and desist sent to her from my lawyer to make her stop that. She started harassing me by looking for any infraction she possibly could to report to the city. An inspector came out several times and found nothing wrong. In fact, I offered one of them a burger while grilling, and they graciously accepted. Did I mention the HOA hates barbecues and parties that aren't approved in advance? Well, they do. And I like to grill when the weather is good, and my neighbors actually love me for it because I invite them over. What a dream neighbor. I had the police called on me several times for noise complaints because I was playing music on a Saturday afternoon while having my friends over. The HOA president I caught trespassing once when she was trying to peer into my windows. I called the police but she denied ever doing it. I got cameras. She hasn't trespassed since, but I still got repeated passive-aggressive letters saying my cameras were not an approved addition to my house. Some months ago, I started getting letters for fines in the mail, and when I contacted the HOA, the representative claimed that they had it on record that I joined, and and needed to pay all the fees effective immediately. I told them that was not possible. They then emailed a scanned copy of the forms, and they had a signature on them, but it was not mine. It was very similar in some ways, and I recognized right away as being my ex's handwriting. She knew what my signature looked like. It was a loose imitation at best. I got in touch with a lawyer right away over the forged signature, but the HOA still demanded to go to court, and it took 7 months before that happened. Meanwhile, they were stacking unpaid fines against me weekly, and were threatening to put a lien on my house. When we went to court, the HOA president looked very smug, but my lawyer pointed out how the signature wasn't the same as mine, and was very inconsistent in the various forms. I'd never allowed the HOA president into my house, and I'd never requested the forms. The idiot HOA president actually slammed her palm on the table and said it was still binding. But when pressed where the fraudulent signature came from, she admitted my ex-wife called the HOA and they sent her the forms and got them back in the mail signed. But then she actually claimed she thought I'd signed them. The judge looked at her and asked if she was serious. She confirmed she was. The judge then asked how a woman I was no longer married to, that had never even lived with me in my current residence, was supposed to have any bearing on whether or not I joined her HOA. She went quiet and I could see the oh shit look on her face as the hamster wheels were turning, and she seemed to finally mentally put the pieces together. My lawyer then counterclaimed that what the HOA did was blatant fraud and legal actions must be taken, and they were. I countersued the HOA for the emotional distress of the harassment I'd gotten since moving in, which I had lots of proof of. That won me about 10 grand after lawyer fees that I decided to put towards my mortgage. The HOA president was removed from her throne. I like to think that she was kicking and screaming. She was also slapped with a hefty fine. I've seen her outside a few times and she always looks at me like I am the devil. The HOA itself had to pay all of my legal fees too. I wanted to go after my ex for forging my signature, but can't because not long after she forged my signature on those forms, she apparently left the country to be with a third affair partner. She's somewhere in Europe from what I can see of the final post on her Facebook before she disappeared. I can't do anything against her unless she ever returns to the US. So that was a wash. I'm not getting letters from the HOA anymore though, and the new president has promised to keep things completely cordial from now on. I still don't feel like I got much of a win in this though. Other than the 10k payout, it all felt like a huge waste of time. But, like we was kindly provided, we do have an update to this in a moment. One of the things that really jumped out to this as well is like HOAs that they can stop you from having a barbecue. You have to have like permission before to have a barbecue. Like during the summer months, I'm barbecuing every week. You'd have to apply for permission every single time to do that. That's crazy. So there was a couple of comments below this one offering OP some advice. Sean says, still lay the forgery charges, with the added bonus of this being mail fraud, and thus automatically in the US a federal offense. Then they will simply tell DHS about the arrest warrant and put evidence into cold storage, waiting for her to appear on flight and get flagged for arrest as she enters the country again. Might take a year or 3 before she does actually trigger it, but with the HOA case's evidence and the admission from the HOA president, in court records, slam dunk for wire fraud. The damages are all HOA fees and fines, plus all attorney costs, plus the penalty, plus any time you spent on fighting this at your official rate at work or contracting, all adding up to enough to give her a few years in a federal hotel. This will be a time bomb waiting to trigger in the future when she thinks it's all long over. ISTR 30 years is the prescription time for this, so she will still be on the hook till she's at retirement age. Opie says you make an excellent point, but make sure to get the charges filed. Thanks. Still, as much as I'd love to see my ex get arrested for it, I really don't want her coming back. Europe can have her. We have to, wherever she is. So, Opie comes back in with her update and says, the wheel turns, but the hamster is long dead. That's the best way to describe the stupidity of my ex-wife and her parents. My ex was dumb enough to come back to the US, even though there were fraud charges waiting for her here. Here is the link to my old post. Since I posted some time ago about my ex-wife, I feel I owe it to everyone to provide an update. So, to give a quick recap, I posted a couple of years ago about how my ex forged my signature on HOA forms to try and fuck me over for divorcing her. And then she ran off to Europe to avoid charges before I had a chance to file them. Even her social media went dark. so I figured she'd left for good. However, her affair partner who knocked her up eventually kicked her and their kid out. And then they came back to the US after my ex begged her parents to buy them tickets home. I guess the affair partner just wanted her as a side piece that he could toss out like a used doll once he was done with her. I kinda don't blame him for kicking her out because she's evil, but at the same time, he booted out his own kid too. If that's what he intended to do from the start, then he's just one of the worst kinds of people. A fraud case was obviously still open against my ex, and she got arrested not long after coming back into the country because her passport was flagged, and police were there to arrest her on landing. When I finally saw her in court, she looked very different. She'd put on weight. She couldn't dye her hair or cake her face in makeup anymore. And there was just this aura of defeat about her. Not long after she was arrested, her parents showed up at my house and pleaded with me to drop any charges I could, and then even had the audacity to ask me to take my ex back. Of course I refused, but it was in one ear and out the other with them. I visited my ex at jail only once because her parents hounded me for weeks. And she put on the same kind of pitiful, I love you, feel sorry for me act as when I first confronted her with evidence of her infidelity. I told her she couldn't be serious after the shit she pulled. She never really loved me. She cheated on me with 3 men that I knew of, and possibly more. She got pregnant by another man and had no remorse about how she destroyed our marriage. Then she maliciously tried to defame me, and she illegally signed me up for an HOA by forging my signature. And for the cherry on top, she ran away to another country like the pathetic, cowardly bitch she is. And she somehow hoped I would take her back after all of that. Well, that was enough to make her see that she had zero chance of manipulating me. Even if hell froze over, I'd not take this woman back in any way. Her parents also couldn't really argue with my reasoning, other than repeatedly saying that she's their only daughter, and the mother of their only grandchild. Her mother kept crying that my ex could change. I said she could change without me. I'm done with her. Then they tried the stupidest thing yet. They told me my ex and I were still married in the eyes of God, and that I have to help her because it's the Christian thing to do. I asked them what the Bible said about infidelity, if they were going to bring religion into it, and they shut up. I then slammed the door in their faces. They still hounded me till I called the police on them, and then got my lawyer to send a cease and desist to my ex's parents to stop trying to contact me, or I'd file charges against them too. That finally stopped them. But I do kinda wonder if they try and pursue child support from the father of my ex's kid, since they are stuck raising them now, if that's even possible. What with the father being in a different country and all, and on the move a lot from what I've heard. My ex could not be bailed out of jail by her parents because she was denied that option since already being guilty of fleeing once. And even if she did have a set bail, I bet it would have been so high there's no way her parents could have paid it. My ex originally pled not guilty, but I think her lawyer convinced her to change it to guilty for a lesser sentence. Only problem for her was, the judge presiding over the trial was a real hard ass, and they charged my ex with felony fraud for forging my signature and mailing it, as well as knowingly fleeing the country to avoid charges. She got hit with a decent sentence of nearly a decade behind bars, no parole. By the time she gets out of prison, she'll be 42 years old. She broke down sobbing on the floor and had to be dragged out. I won't miss her. I think justice was served. I wasn't ecstatic about it or anything because I'd emotionally moved on from that woman long ago. And I've become happier because I've been dating a great woman for the past 6 months. She's a single mum and works as a clerk. Honestly, I think I already love her more than I ever did my ex. Her son seems to like me a lot too. His own dad is someone I haven't heard great things about. If anyone was still wondering about the HOA, they've kept their promise and left me alone. But I've heard that behind closed doors, the old board that were all inevitably replaced hate my guts because I basically started their downfall. Yes, the entire board was eventually replaced, and the new board are running things far better now. Fines nearly stopped, monthly dues were lowered, several rules were removed from the CCNRs, and the street has been a happier place for a year now. Wow, an HOA story with a happy ending. I guess that always gets to me is the child in this situation, poor kid. But what an absolute roller coaster. 2 years later, the update. I love it when they come back, after a significant amount of time to give us that update. What do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And let's move on to another story. Now, I spotted this story on the Am I the Arsehole subreddit from Ponderosa Willow and says, "Am I the arsehole for ruining a funeral and potentially costing a lot of family members their jobs? My grandparents passed away recently. I followed the guidelines my grandma set up for her final event. Her church, her burial plot, her casket, and the same for my grandpa. I just didn't expect for it to be a joint funeral. I sent out the notifications to friends of theirs and family after the date was set in stone. Their friends all came, and so did most of my grandma's church, but no family showed up. I wasn't surprised. I hadn't seen most of them in about 4 years. I had a great time with my grandparents' friends, and then I went back home and cried my heart out. I'd been their sole caregiver. I didn't know what to do without them. I'd taken care of them for 15 years. It started with little things like lifting heavy things and escalated to needing to change the bed twice a night sometimes. I was empty and started to scroll through my grandpa's Facebook to see pictures he had posted before his memory went. I found a group, started about 3 years ago, that was being flooded with activity. When I went poking around, I found out it was my mother who was hosting a funeral at her church and was trying to get final expenses taken care of. I was stunned. Here was the woman I hadn't spoken to since throwing her out of the house for stealing jewelry and upsetting Grandma terribly by using her Alzheimer's against her. How could you forget my birthday? You promised to give me this. I went to the funeral my mother had planned and I listened to the pastor, and then my mother got up to talk. She told everyone how hard it was taking care of them, and something inside of me roared to life. I don't remember everything I said, but it did include that she didn't pay for anything for them. Not their caskets, not their burial plots, not their cremation. Nothing. I told everyone I put them to rest at the funeral Grandma planned for herself 4 days prior. I said she never paid for any of their care or even seen them for 4 years. I was asked to leave and drove home. Later, a cousin asked me if what I said was true, and when I said it was, I could provide proof. I explained my mother had been taking funds from the family for years to pay for their care at a facility because they had outlived their insurance policy. He also explained I got a lot of people in trouble because somewhere in the speech I shouted I had done it all alone for years without any help. A lot of family members used my grandparents as an excuse to get out of work and had invited their co-workers to the funeral. By hearing my outbursts, they were now in trouble for lying as for the reasons to leave work or miss days. She then went on to ask me about the inheritance and when that would be passed out. I told her that if anyone had earned the inheritance, it had already been taken care of. I thought I was in the right, but now I'm doubting myself after so many cousins and family members are calling to tell me I handled it really poorly. Am I the arsehole? Did I handle this badly? Everyone's telling me I did. Now, firstly, I just want to say I'm extremely sorry for your loss, and secondly, not the arsehole in the slightest for calling out these absolute shitty people. But the first commenter says not the arsehole. I'm honestly not entirely sure how you could have handled that better without being ignored. Your family members created these situations for themselves and now must deal with the consequences. I mean, most, if not all of them, came to their actual funerals. You handled everything both for their care over the last 15 years and in their passing. And that's probably been very hard for you, especially if you don't have any support yourself. I hope you do. Be kinder to yourself. You're grieving and will need some time to heal. If you need someone to talk to, feel free to DM me. Opie says none of the family members came to the funeral. Some of them I've excused in my head because of my mum's actions. She sent out messages to everyone the location had changed due to the issues with the size of the location. Grandma had picked out the location for her funeral, the same place she used to teach sewing lessons and run childcare teaching events. She loved that location. It was attached to her church. She didn't care what your question was. She'd answer it and help you solve it. Didn't know how to fix your seam of your jeans? She could help. Didn't know how to stop your baby from crying all night? She'd know. She ran a lot of services for a community that's still standing strong today. One of which is the Early Days program at her church. Members sign up to visit new parents, do laundry, vacuum, dust, do dishes, cook a meal, watch the baby if the parents need to sleep. I'm so proud of her for the impact on her community she left. Wow. What an amazing story about your grandma there. She sounds like an absolutely lovely person, and people are going to remember her for years to come. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. Oh, got me tearing up over here. Bloody hell. OP comes in with another comment and says she was absolutely incredible. I have her pots and pans, knives and bowls. Grandma made most of them for her himself. I know all her recipes. She and I wrote her cookbook for her community at her church and with the Red Hatters. I've got all of her hats. Her amazing hats with huge feathers, heaps of lace and fake flowers. I have tons of costume jewelry she loved more than her real jewelry. I'm more connected to these 20-cent or $20 pieces than her diamond, opals, pearls, or anything else in her collection. I miss her so much, and her whole community misses her and her grandpa. All I want is to step back in time 10 years ago, when Grandpa arranged fish for a friend days, or Grandma arranged for us to make flower pens. There would be a group of us just sitting and wrapping fake flower stems to cheap pens with green floral tape. Again, what amazing grandparents OP has, and it sounds like OP is following in those footsteps. So be proud of yourself, OP. Continue to be who you are. You sound absolutely amazing. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, your support, your time always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much. And I will see you in the next one. Take care and much love.